There's some implicit promise internally that once I get to this goal, then I'll be happy. Once I write a New York Times bestseller, then I'll feel better about it. Once I achieve this certain number on the scale, then I'll be happy with my body. Once I get to $1 million in revenue, then I'll be happy with the business. And so you're kind of constantly pushing happiness off to the next milestone and thinking that once you get there, then finally you'll be satisfied. But I think, in fact, the better way to do it is to fall in love with the process, to fall in love with the lifestyle. Then you can be happy along the way and still achieve the goals as you go, still achieve the milestones. For a long time, I had trouble with this question of, do I have to be dissatisfied if I want to be driven?
Yeah.
Do you have to be dissatisfied to be driven? Because to me, I felt like there's where I'm at right now, and there's where I want to be. And so there's this gap, and that gap is dissatisfaction. That gap is, you want it to change, you want it to close. And it's also what is motivating and driving you, is to try to close that gap. And so the healthiest answer, maybe the answer is yes, I don't know. But the healthiest answer that I've come up with is, imagine like an acorn falls from a tree. It manages to take root, becomes a seedling and then a sapling, and eventually grows into this mature oak tree. And at no point in that process, when it was just an acorn, it wasn't criticizing itself for not being a sapling. When it was just a sapling, it wasn't criticizing itself for not being an oak. It wasn't dissatisfied with where it was at. And nobody came over and was criticizing it for, I can't believe you're not a full-grown tree yet. But it kept growing the whole time. So simultaneously, you have this thing where it was both perfect at each stage that it was at. Nothing was wrong, and yet it continued to grow. And the reason is because that's just what an oak tree does. That's what it is encoded to do. It is encoded for growth. And so when I look at myself, I think if I put myself in the right position, that's how I feel about it. I am perfectly happy with where I'm at each stage, and yet I'm encoded to grow, right? I'm encoded to keep going. And so I can both be driven and be satisfied. I can both be appreciative of the moment and still moving forward. And I think that works best when you find that thing. Sometimes we call it your strengths. Sometimes we might say it's what you're encoded to do. But when you find that thing that is well aligned for you. And if you do find that, then you can have both of those.
I love that. And I think with age and maturity, I've gotten closer to being in that region where I'm well aware nothing is going to make me happier at all. Like no accomplishment, future, nothing's going to change anything. But at the same time, I'm still striving. And that does feel like a contradiction to some degree. It feels like, how can those two things be true at the same time? That you're striving for things that won't really move the needle in any way. The difference I see between like me and something in nature is that the thing in nature probably isn't comparing itself on Instagram to everyone else. And I understand humans to be like comparison machines, kind of how we understand the value of things. Like I understand the value of the steak on a menu by the cheap steak and the most expensive one. So I think the middle one is probably right. Do you think much about comparison as a motivating or demotivating force in this picture?
I think it can be very helpful, and it can also be very harmful. So it's just sort of a sense of how you use it. I tend to find it better if you compare small things. So if you compare marketing strategies or squat form or, writing style or, the first sentence of each chapter, like how do I have a good intro? If you compare tactics, then that can be really helpful for building skills and for developing your ability. If you compare big things, marriage, net worth, things like that, it's like that's just kind of a recipe for ending up unhappy. Because as the scale gets bigger, things get more vague. There's so many things involved in marriage, and so or net worth or whatever. You just see one little slice, and you are trying to compare these two big things, but you don't even know what the full picture is.
Okay.
And so, comparison is like the teacher of skills when it's applied narrowly, but it's the thief of joy when it's applied broadly.
That makes sense. Yeah.